Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today we're going to talk about how to make your own gold. And I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to take some material. This is quartz vein material. Don't know if you can see it. I'll kind of give you a close-up there. I'll give you a close-up still photo that shows a lot of this ore has some copper staining on it. This was picked up out of an old gold mine dump, and I'm going to go through all the steps of taking this gold-bearing ore and turning it into a button of gold. Now, I did that recently in another video where I took a very small amount of ore that I found with a metal detector, and this time we're going to do a larger sample. Now, some of this gold does have, or some of this rock does have visible gold in it. I've looked at some of these pieces, and indeed, if you get a loop on it and look at it real close, you can see there is some free gold in this rock. I haven't looked at every single piece. Most of them I kind of looked at on the dump. If it looked good and there was some sign of copper mineralization, I took it and put it in my bucket. Got 4 buckets of this. I got right around a 1/16 of a ton. A little over 100 pounds of rock. We're going to crush it up and turn it into a button of gold. And if you want to get into this, I'm going to show you an inexpensive way that you can process your own rock and get gold for yourself. So come along with me today. Let's go through this video, and I'll go through all the steps in detail, and you'll know when we're done how to take gold-bearing rock and turn it into a button that you could sell to a refiner. Here's a close-up shot of the ore from the mine that I picked up. It was a gold mine in Nevada with a little bit of silver, as most gold mines in Nevada have at least a little bit of silver in them. A lot of silver mines have at least a little bit of gold. But if you look closely at this ore, you can see little spots of greens and blues, indicating that there's copper present in the ore. And what I read about the mine is that the gold is associated with the presence of copper. So it made it easy to pick stuff off the dump, because if I saw any pieces of quartz that had bits of copper staining and signs of pyrite and that sort of thing, then I knew that that was the ore likely to have some gold in it. So that's why I picked this stuff, and we're going to see how much gold it has in it. So the main process that I'm going to be doing to extract the gold, at least the first steps, are going to be to crush this rock down to free the gold that's inside it. And the first step of that will be, we'll basically crush it in 2 steps. That will save us time and money. And my first crusher will take it to size like this, which is basically -1/2 inch. And then we'll take pieces like this and we'll feed them into my chainmail crusher, and I will get material like this. Now I'll show you close-ups of both of these, but you'll see that this is a very fine powder, and whatever fine gold that's in these rocks will be freed when it's crushed to a powder like this. And after we've freed the gold and produced a powder like that, then we're going to run it through a sluice box, and I'm going to show you how to operate a sluice box properly to get the best fine gold recovery that you can. That's going to be important because the gold that's in this is going to be pretty much on the fine side, and we don't want to lose it. So here's the close-up, like I said, of the coarse crush ore. Basically, this has been through a jaw crusher, and you can see it's down to mostly -1/2 inch kind of size. And then here is the ore that's been through the chain mill and crushed down to the final crushing size that I will take from this size and then start to run it through the sluice box to recover the gold. Hey, well, I'm getting started with basically the first step in crushing the rock up to release the gold. Now, stuff that I collected from the dump, you know, some of it is smaller pieces like this that could go directly into a crusher. But I've also got bigger pieces like this and this that are gonna need to be broken up. Now, talking about inexpensive ways to crush gold, basically the cheapest thing you can do is this mortar and pestle, you can see that the piece I had to pound the gold with, or pound the ore with, I actually lost this piece and got a ball from a ball mill and a piece of rebar and welded them up and good as new. But the problem with these kind of things, and of course this is a pretty small one, they come in much larger sizes, but the problem with these is that it's a lot of work to crush even more than a few ounces of rock. I mean, a single piece like this is not going to fit in there, but even smaller pieces like I showed you, it's work to break up rock with a mortar and pestle. I've seen guys make, they're not hard to make, and I've seen guys do things like take a rod of steel like this and another bar, and you weld them together, and that's a great pounder. And then you can take a pipe and weld it to a solid plate, and you weld them up, and you know, you got a piece like this, the pounder, and you've got your receiver like this. Only basically what you do is just have a piece of pipe welded to a flat sheet on the bottom. Of course, your flat sheet on the bottom has to be pretty darn thick. It can't be you know, some thin 1/8 inch steel. Basically, you probably want on a bottom 3/8 or half as your base plate. But even with larger systems of a mortar and pestle type setup, it's still a lot of work, which is why I have crushers, okay? And I can take rock like this, and basically what I normally use is a 2-pound hammer, and most rocks will break with a 2-pound hammer. In case I need more than a 2-pound hammer, well, I stand up and use my 8-pound sledgehammer. And between everything else, the 8-pounder, I've never had any rocks that I can't break with that. Now, this particular breaker that I've made here is a 1/2 inch sheet of plate steel, 1/2 inch plate steel, and then a border around it that I've welded on. And this broken piece right here that's not there, that just wasn't there in the original piece as I acquired it. But the 1/2 inch plate steel will stand up to a lot of abuse. And then I have a properly sized piece of angle iron here, and it makes basically a 4-walled, so that stuff that I hit, when it breaks off, now of course it can fly up, but most of the pieces, when I hit them, they break out sideways and they get caught by one of these. And then I just pick it up and put it in another bucket of my smaller stuff, and you know, I'm ready to go. And once I get done with breaking all of this stuff up into sizes that can go into my jaw crusher, it's rated at 3x4, but honestly, pieces more than about 1.5 inches thick and about 3 inches, I have a tough time going into that little jaw. So I have to break these down, and well, I'll end up sitting here for a while with my hammer, 2-pound hammer, breaking stuff up into pieces like this, and then, you know, these pieces are ready to go into the crusher and ready to work. So that basically, on a much larger scale, because you can see I've got a pan full of rock here, got some buckets. Got 4 buckets worth of rock that total about 120 pounds. And I'm gonna need to break all the bigger pieces, the smaller stuff that's ready to go into the crusher. Of course, I don't have to break that. But all the bigger pieces need to be broken so that I can then take it and work it in the crusher. And then once I get done with the jaw crusher, and I'll show you that process, it's coming up, that'll be the next step. And then the next step I'll show you after that is going through my chain mill. And once it's gone through the jaw crusher and the chain mill, it's ready for the sluice box, and we'll show you that, and ready for recovery of the fine gold that's in this rock. So that's where we're at, and I'm sure you don't want to see me sit here and break rock for a few hours. So I'm going to go ahead and go forward with this, and I'll see you at the next step when we get to the jaw crusher. So I'm sorry that in the video it didn't show my pounding plate as well, and so I just thought I'd give you this close-up view showing where I was working. And you can see this plate, it's kind of L-shaped, but it's rectangular. It's just a flat half-inch plate that I welded basically a skirt around to retain rocks that head off to the side one direction or another. Just kind of retain it there in the rectangle. And there's my 2-pound hammer and my 8-pound sledge, and if the small one won't break it, then the large one will. So that gives you a close idea of what I'm doing to break up the rock. So I'm here doing the next step in the crushing of the rock, which is basically taking rock here that's kind of walnut size to up to maybe a child's fist size. Then taking that and putting it in my jaw crusher here. I have a hand crank operated jaw crusher, and it crushes the rock down. And then in here I have material that's minus ½ an inch. Now I've got 4 buckets of this, and the total weight is about 120 pounds. I'll weigh it all up once I get it all crushed, but this is the next step in the process. I've shown you that I take bigger pieces and smash them with a hammer. Then I take my jaw crusher here and break it down to a minus ½ an inch, and then I'll take my chain mill and crush it down to powder, and then we'll take the powder and run it through my sluice box. Probably more than once. I'll probably do a double run through the sluice box just to make sure I get everything. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. So I've got some rock in there, put a couple more pieces in, put some in. I've got a little, this is a weight, a diving weight, and a glove, an old no good glove. Basically I put it on top there so bits and pieces, because jaw crushers, if you've ever used a jaw crusher, sometimes when you get down to only a few rocks in the jaw crusher, it'll have a tendency sometimes to shoot rocks up out of the crusher, and you don't want that. So that's one of the downsides of jaw crushers. And then I have this little bit of cardboard here that takes any rocks that shoot out that direction and just makes sure they stay in the bucket. And then I get going. Now, I've got a motor for this thing, and the motor would sit there. The motor's down here by my feet. I still haven't taken the time to install the motor. You see, I got a lot of mess here that I'd have to clean up to put the motor in, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So it's something that I'm gonna do. I'll get that motor installed. The next time I crush a lot of rock like this, the next lot is even larger. This lot is around 120 pounds, I said. The next lot is gonna be closer to 250 pounds. In fact, it's gonna be over 250 pounds. And it's got some good gold in it. I'm looking forward to crushing it, but I'm gonna need to get the motor going for that. This is a pain in enough. It's enough of a pain just crushing this 120 pound lot by hand. So I've got a motor, I've got the pulleys and all that to do it. I just need to clean up my garage. Probably a lot of you guys can relate to having a garage that needs to be cleaned up. So anyway, I'm gonna get back to crushing this rock and getting it ready for the next step, which I'm gonna show you in just a second here at the chain mill. So this is just a quick shot of my chain mill. You can see there's a short length of chain right here. There's a motor back here that spins the chain around at a super speed at like 1700 RPMs. And this is just a little drum that the chain spin around in, and the chain spinning so fast beat the ore up until it's small enough to go out. There's a small screen down here at the bottom of the drum. It gets sucked out this tube and goes down to a dust collector. So that's just a a quick basic description of how the chain mill works. And now I'm going to take my my ore specimens, my ore that I'm crushing up, and I'm going to run it through here, and we're going to see what we get, because we have to run it through this to get it down to that really small size so we can run it through a sluice box. Hey, I'm going through and crushing my rock down to powder size with my chainmail crusher right here. Hope you can see it. I've shown it to you in other videos, but what I'm doing is I'm ending up having to do a lot of maintenance on these things. And one of the things that you should know if you're thinking about getting one of these chain mills is that they do take up a lot of maintenance. Now mine just runs on chains that I get at Home Depot. Pretty standard stuff that I can buy, but when you get it like this, you have to cut every 4th link, because the chains in the mill are only 3 links long of this size, and they only will crush a set of chains of 3 links will only crush about 80 pounds. Maybe a little more if you have soft rock, maybe a little less if your rock is super hard, but the rock that I'm crushing is moderately hard, and I'm only getting about 75 pounds per set of chains. And so I've been welding them up and doing different things to try and make them last a little longer. But I still have to go through and open the thing up and change the chains in the drum every so often. I've just gone through and made a change. And so now I'm going to go ahead and crush some rock with it. I'll seal it all up and I'll show you when I get started. Okay, well I've changed the chains and I've put the cover back on it, got it all ready to go. I'm gonna start crushing now, but I like to talk to you when the thing isn't on because it makes an awful lot of noise. So let me get it started and you'll see the noise that it makes. But I'm down to where I'm actually a little farther than half. I've only got maybe 40% of the rock to go. I'm almost done with the crushing to powder phase. It's pretty loud, so I'm gonna get on with the crushing. I'll see you when I'm done. The next phase is to put it through my recirculating sluice box to capture the gold. Okay, so I'm finally getting to going through my concentrates and panning them down and then sucking it up with a sucker bottle. The gold is really fine, as is very typical for hard rock gold. It tends to be really on the super fine side. I'm getting 200, 300 mesh gold, some a little bigger, some probably 50 mesh, but it's not very big gold. So a lot of tapping and carefully extracting the gold. That's part of the skills of getting gold out of hard rock quartz gold is just being able to process the last little bit. Now, it's really hard to get a really clean concentrate out of this, but I'm not worried that I've got some black sand and pyrite and that sort of thing in with my bottle here. Because in the end, I'm going to take this and melt it all down and produce a button. That way I'll have a nice, easy to handle button that I can put into my holdings, my gold holdings, and it'll work out just fine. So here I am, I'm finishing up with panning out the concentrates from my recirculating sluice. And when I get this all done, the next step's going to be melting it down and making a button. Okay, we're down to the final step in the process of converting that rock into gold and doing it cheaply. So I've got my graphite crucible here. I've got the concentrates from the process that I panned down to get as clean as I could. There's still impurities in it, but that's why we're doing this and taking it down to a button. We're gonna take it and heat it up in my furnace. I will show you that. I'm gonna mix the concentrates with sodium carbonate and with borax, and we'll mix it up with, I don't know, around 3/4 flux, 1/4 concentrates. That way we get a nice clean process. Then we'll fire it all up, get it super hot and melted. Then we'll pour it into this cone mold, and down at the bottom we'll concentrate all the metal and we'll let it cool, and I'll show you the bead when we're done at the final end of the process. We'll weigh it up and see how it goes. Okay, so here you can see the flame going and the furnace is on. We've got fire and we're heating up the flux and the concentrates together in order to make our pour. I will also go ahead and do the pour in this way so you can see me pour the red hot material out into the cone mold. Okay, we're up to temperature and ready to pour. So I'm going to turn the gas off. So here's the final button from all the work crushing the rock. It wasn't a lot of expense to crush the rock and to extract the gold from it, but the final weight is 8.1 grams. Now you can look at the button and see that it's rather pale. The gold is rather pale. And the mine that this came from, the ore that this came from, was a gold and silver mine. And so this button, while it has a good amount of gold in it, certainly has also a significant amount of silver as well. That's why the gold is so pale. But after all, it was an excellent exercise, and you know, this amount of gold is certainly several $100s worth, even not counting the fact that there's a significant amount of silver in it. It was an excellent project to show how gold can be made cheaply. Now, if you want to learn more about prospecting for gold and finding gold for yourself out in the wilds, I've written a book about it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now. So let me tell you a little bit more about my book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I wrote it because I want you to be able to go out and find for yourself Fistful of Gold. And you can see that it's an encyclopedia with all kinds of information, pictures, and that sort of thing. It's not in color, but color would have cost me a lot more to have printed, and so the book would have cost a lot more. It's for sale on Amazon, and you can pick it up. I'll put a link in the description below. I also serve as the editor for a prospecting magazine. It's ICMJ's Prospecting and Mining Journal. And honestly, you should check that out. We got stories and information, legal stuff, everything you know to increase your skills as a prospector. I write articles in this every month, and a lot of other very experienced prospectors contribute to the magazine as well. So check the magazine out. Also, I have a website, and the website is at NevadaOutbackGems.com. I'll put a link for it in the description below, but there's gobs of information there that you will find useful in your prospecting efforts. Finally, I want to say that I really appreciate your comments and thoughts, and even positive criticism. Don't come on there and just toss out insults, because I'll just delete your comments. But if you've got helpful things to say and questions to ask, do write and put those in the comments, because I answer my comments to people, and you'll hear from me in responding to you. So if you've enjoyed this video and you like what you see and you're interested in finding out more, well then sign up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so they'll let you know when I post new videos. And like it and share it if again you see stuff that you really are excited about. And I'll be coming out with lots more new videos, and so we'll see you again real soon.